Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May meeting of the LEEP Board of Trustees meeting. We're going to wait on the line while we welcome a couple of additional members to the call, but if you're joining us, hope you're doing well. As usual, you can leave us a comment in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll have time for public comments at the end of the meeting.
Hey, Charles.
Oh.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Just wrapping up another meeting. Hi, David. Good to see you. It's both Davids. Okay. Mine is here. Magdalene is here. So we're just waiting on Emily, I think. Okay.
That's right. Deliness sends her apologies, everyone. She was out sick today and just isn't really up to being here, but I will do my best to present the instructional side of the house on her behalf.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. I hope she gets better soon. Okay. I will shoot Emily a quick text.
Bob, where are you these days?
I am in New Orleans. Limited travel to New York just to meet with some new clients that are taking face-to-face meetings.
Understood. I mean, you may as well come back north. Apparently, we have no mask mandate tomorrow. So,
congratulations! I saw.
I don't know if congratulations are the right words, but
I know.
Yeah, no.
all are infinitely more complicated. But all joking aside, we always welcome you back. So.
I'm excited to get in the building. I've yet to see the fourth floor, so one of these days.
There's a memorial statue to you there.
Oh.
All the fine work you've done. It's the Bob Keogh lobby niche.
Lovely.
That's like having a Sylvester Stallone statue in Philadelphia, right?
You made it happen, Bob.
I don't know about that. I just do the books.
You build a shrine to Bob somewhere.
The books are pretty important. Okay, well, I haven't gotten anything back from Emily. We have a quorum though at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, so I think we can go ahead and get started and she'll join us when she can. Oh, here she is.
Hey, Emily.
Hey, Emily. All right, and now we are here.
Great. Well, welcome everyone again, and welcome. We have 2 of our LEEP Academy family members, parents here on the line as well. So I'm glad you guys could take the time. And we will get started.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. First order of business would be to review and approve the notice and agenda for tonight. I don't have any edits to the agenda. Does anybody else have any items they need to adjust? No, we're good. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda as written. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, David. Okay, great.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Okay. And the Then second item would be the approval of the April minutes. I went through them fairly quickly, but I don't have any adjustments. Does anybody else have any edits they want to make to the minutes? Looks like no. Okay. Great. Then I will also make a motion to adopt the April minutes as written. I have a second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Okay, I will turn it over to the school team for new business.
Thank you. I certainly want to make it a practice of, not reading to you the entire report and the entire board bullets, but I hope everybody had a chance to look at those. I would like to spend some time on just what I see as a few highlights and headlines. First, it's been a down year citywide for charter school enrollment for whatever reason, but we continue to feel like it's a real positive for us and actually our strongest year to date. So right now our wait list across the school stands at 54 families. We're nearing 100% in terms of families accepting seats and having begun the registration process online. And so we're feeling good about that, and we're planning some summertime events and other kinds of welcoming steps to make sure that we keep our incoming families engaged. That includes, of course, all of our next kindergarten class, but also some families who are joining us to fill in available spaces in the older grades. So we're feeling good about that. We were also pleased to announce our in-person summer camp and summer school for 5 weeks this summer. We held a family workshop to explain the ins and outs of these programs, led by our new director of summer and after school, Diana Carrera. And, she's bringing her experience to bear on planning something that really does teach the whole child and includes field trips each week, kind of enrichment curriculum where the kids focus on a different region of the world each week with culture and art and looking at the science, and also plenty of recreation for our students who are invited to be part of the summer camp, or summer school rather. The day starts with some instruction at the beginning of the day, but they also join in the afternoon enrichment and the Friday field trips. So it's not only studying. So we're pleased about that. It's the first year we've had a chance to use this great building and not have it under construction, but instead have it be a source of some summer programming. And although we have not been able to extend the summer school to every single grade level, we want to make sure we get off to a really solid start. We are actively hiring and planning and preparing for that program. And if we're able to feel confident about adding some additional seats, we'll definitely consider doing that. But right now we want to get that summer off on a good foot. And as you can see, the theme is World Explorers. So we're looking forward to that. By the way, feel free to jump in at any time if anybody has questions. We have also been hiring and seeing promising results. It's a real campaign to be in growth mode because you're hiring for a whole new grade level and additional leaders each year. But it's also rewarding because it brings people into our orbit as each year gives us some more standing and some more credibility. We get more and more experienced folks interested in making the leap, as we say. And the latest leader that I'm so excited to be welcoming to our team starting the 1st of June is Johanna Andujar. Johanna is somebody who was a principal in the Ascend Public Schools Charter Network for more than 6 years, where she helped transform their school culture. And we started talking to her about joining us as a dean of students to lead that culture piece. We decided that with her level of instructional background, we didn't want to miss the chance to also have her contribute and help Deli Ness and the instructional coaches and deans in that area as well. And so she'll have both in her portfolio, working with our instructional leaders, but also helping us when it comes to school culture. The education jargon there is really, it's an umbrella term for just how we interact with our students and with our families. So the way that we approach behavior management in the classroom and around the school, we want to take the responsive classroom approach. Johanna's an expert in that. She really is, and helped bring that to more than one school in her career. But also just something we've talked a lot about is, as we reopen, returning to the joy. That's one of our core virtues. Getting back to some version of assemblies, making sure that we build in connections, celebrations, cross-cultural connections, recess, all those kinds of things. And so Johanna's going to be a leader for us as we kind of expand our work that way post-COVID. And so we'll have more updates on the hiring process, and I'll mention again this a little bit later, but I did want to highlight Johanna, and she's going to join us with the title, if I didn't say it earlier, of Vice Principal. We have been making some progress on facility planning. In this public meeting, we don't usually share a whole lot of details on sort of ongoing negotiations. But Roberto, if you wouldn't mind, would you share a few words about this area of our work together?
Thanks, Michael. The portfolio that I'm responsible for is certainly partly due to facilities and real estate acquisition, as well as fundraising and as well as replication. On facility planning progress, there's two pieces to this. The bigger piece is the study that the board approved that DBI has been tasked to conduct for us. DBI is our project management team. And the study is a full overview of the potential of building out our existing campus for grades 4 and 5. DBI has particular experience in this kind of work. We've made great progress in identifying the architectural team that will be partnering with DBI to get the concept design done and studying the various pieces of, I call them building blocks around the campus to see how they integrate into a whole, with the potential of adding additional space should that space become available. And as we said from the very beginning, our long-term plan for the campus is a long-term plan. It's a 31-year lease, and we hope that in time we will be able to take up more of the existing space there. We don't know when the Chase Bank space will become available, but we're taking some of those variables into account and trying to plan for the future. DBI has put forward 3 architectural teams, and Michael and I interviewed all 3 of them. We landed on 2 that we thought were very good, and then we finally chose 1. We did some due diligence to speak to some clients that included Brilla Charter School. Brilla is like-minded like us, and they had a huge urban space facility that Pell Overton, the architectural team, renovated for them. And we just felt that this architectural team really understood elementary school education, and so we selected them. They're already on the case. The study and the architectural concept design phase should be done in about 8 weeks. We're very happy with the selection. Are there any questions on the DBI/architectural study? No? Good. The second part of our facilities planning, the board had also approved the exploration of a community neighborhood partnership with Grace Baptist Church. Pastor Christopher Ortiz invited us, Michael and me, onto the church property a few months ago. We've developed a friendship, and Grace Baptist Church has invited us to submit a proposal that would renovate and restore their parking lot next door to the church. We like the facility because it's only a long block away. It is secure. It would be just for our school. And I presented an architect for Michael's consideration and David's, and we selected Aaron Valley, who happens to be a close friend and close colleague. And Aaron has already done concept descriptions for the playground. On Wednesday, tomorrow, I meet with the pastor to review a couple of these concepts with him and with Aaron and get the input from the pastor of the church so that Michael and I can then quickly meet with the elders, the council that the pastor reports with, and discuss what our needs are and also look at the church needs, because churches are very important to our communities and we want to make sure that it's a good partnership, one that seeks to build the relationship. They know what we need, and now we're trying to provide them with a wonderful parking lot, but more importantly for us, a more wonderful playground that is safe, secure, nearby, and just exclusively for the use of our school kids throughout the year. That is based on a total renovation that we will invest in, and we're in exchange. We will get a long-term lease. We're looking for anywhere up to a 10-year lease at a very, very, very favorable rate. And that's where we are. We're sending along a document to Cliff Schneider to prepare the lease document for consideration by the church elders. Any questions on the playground?
Nope, that's exciting news.
Thank
I'm sure the kids are going to be extremely excited.
Our deadline is to get it done by the opening of the school year. So we're pushing everything to try to move that forward.
Thank you, Roberto. I know there's also planning underway, which hopefully we'll be able to talk in more depth about next month, about potential expansion space to be used in our fourth year. So not this coming year, but the following year. And
Yeah, we've made a little brief report on this, and we have great progress on it. There is a space nearby, without going into great detail because it is it's still a negotiation, but the negotiation is about 99% there. And we have agreement on rent, and we have agreement on the space, and we have agreement on a number other of amenities that the landlord is going to provide. And it will give us that overflow space for those years that we may be either in construction for the future planning for grades 4 and 5. And it's a great space. Michael has seen it, Maida has seen it, and we're looking forward to telling you more about that next month.
So are we set in terms of space for August, in terms of like the grades we'll have in August? Do we already have that space set up?
Michael?
yes,
And it's
Yeah.
the current space?
be the current space. We may do some spillover office space around the neighborhood for some team members, but in terms of the kids, I'm sitting right now in a classroom, for example, that has been functioning as an office. This will be back to a classroom. On our fourth floor, we have a couple of other empty classrooms, and we'll be moving folks around. So it's not a small feat for us to be completely ready with all those details in place, Maho, as we have a new class coming in and also students returning from remote instruction. But we did design this space for our eventual enrollment in this year when we're going K through 3. So our plan is to use this space, as it was originally designed.
So in terms of space for the students, what kind of restrictions are you considering? Meaning, I know we don't know yet what the guidelines will be, but
Yeah.
is it enough space if we're told this amount of space? Is it enough space if we're thinking round tables, or are we still thinking spaced out desks?
Yeah, it's something that we're looking at in detail. I think likely there will be a combination of round tables in the youngest grades and spaced out desks in the older grades. in all likelihood, the guideline that we expect would be something mirroring the federal guidance, which would be 3 feet in between students, with
Okay.
potential to use some shields if necessary. But this is an object of a lot of detailed planning right now as we order furniture and get ready for that plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, for our teachers who are coming in, both our returning teachers and the new teachers that we're hiring now, they'll be in this space for summer training. And unlike our last 2 summers, they won't be coming in, as we're wrapping up a construction project. So there's also that's going to be a focus in the summer, as the teachers will have their classrooms and they'll be, getting everything just so and configured for everyone to arrive and make sure that the floor plans work. And we, make furniture adjustments or other kind of swaps as we need to. But it's going to be tight, but it's not going to be unsafe. And, that's the commitment that we've all made as a leadership team.
Thank you.
It's a good question. Speaking of COVID safety, a few updates. Thankfully, since our last meeting, we've not had to go remote, and we haven't had any cases in our school community that we're aware of. We elected not to make adjustments to the configuration that we'd had. We listened to a lot of parent feedback. Just did not want to sort of rush to get rid of shields or some of the other routines that we'd sort of just gotten everybody comfortable with. So we didn't rock the boat on that, but I think that we've kind of settled into some routines within the school building. We are continuing to monitor and figure out, what our local and state health organizations are going to be saying, particularly focused on next school year. I'm in a room alone right now, for the record, but in general, when there's more than one person in a room, of course, we're always wearing masks. And the recent change to masks for vaccinated adults, I want to note for everyone, does not apply to school settings. So our staff will continue to be wearing masks, we expect, through the end of this year, if not beyond, depending on what that guidance says. I noted in the board bullets that we've been a little frustrated not to have a scheduled date for our vaccination event, but we are pushing and still in dialogue with our local hospital to arrange for that. And we've continued to do outreach around vaccinations. You see here the couple of the flyers that are actually going home in backpacks tomorrow, as we keep pushing everyone to know not only can you get vaccinated as an adult, but we can help 12-year-olds and older who might be in our families' homes get a vaccine as well. So it's exciting to see that. So the plan is to get through the end of the year and keep everybody safe, keep us open, and then be planning based on the guidelines for what next year looks like. The same, to a smaller degree, goes to our summer programs. We are planning to follow the applicable guidelines around summer programs. It's just that week-to-week shifting that our director is closely monitoring. So I don't know exactly what all the rules will be come summertime, but we'll follow them, whatever they are. Question?
Yeah, just quickly on that note, Ms. Woods also asked this question, but have we shared the numbers of summer attendees yet?
Yeah, so we will have 150 seats in the summer camp program and summer school program combined. And so at this point, and I was saying, Ms. Woods earlier, that when it comes to summer school, we don't right now have seats in every single grade level. But we are, as we hire and build out our program, we are open to the possibility of extending more seats. We just want to be 100% confident that in our first year doing this, we can run a really high quality program. But right now, that total number is 150.
Right.
Finally, a highlight of what's been going on is we've been doing a lot of listening. I, and in many cases, joined by Deli Ness, have sat down with everyone who works at LEEP Academy. And we've met for 15, 20 minutes, and I've just been asking the question of, how is your year going? What are your thoughts about next year? And what are your ideas about how we can improve? And it's been eye-opening to really sit with everybody and see the school from all those different perspectives, just in large part as an exercise following up on our leadership transition, but also as an input into the budgeting and hiring and program planning that we're doing right now. We heard a lot of gratitude, I have to say, for our families and for our mission. We heard about areas where we can improve, in particular around the way that we use our staff's time and the scheduling that we have, the way that we can do better at helping our teachers spend more of their time focused on instruction and have plenty of time for planning to deliver the best quality lesson. And I'll talk in a few minutes about sort of what that has meant for our planning, but that was one big highlight. I shared with the executive committee some additional details around what I'm hearing and the adjustments that we can make for next year, but I really appreciate our team for opening up with Deli Ness and with me, you know, in a spirit of continuous improvement. You know, there was more than one meeting where we just heard about what it felt like to go back and forth from in-person to the building or to remote, and you know what it meant to make some of the academic transitions that we felt we had to make mid-year, whether it was adopting a curriculum or you know some shifting around in classes, and what that meant for teachers. But at the same time, at the end of a meeting like that, hearing a teacher say, and you know what, I'm still committed and you can count me in for next year, and I'm really excited for like what it looks like when we can turn the corner on COVID and return to the school. So again, just a deep appreciation for our team there. We also are live with our family survey, and so we hope that if you're listening now or on the recording, that you'll check your class tag for a link to the online family survey. Those results and the feedback that comes from that really helps us kind of understand the perspectives of our family and how we're doing. And it's really a similar exercise. We want to know how the school is doing so we can keep getting better. So thanks in advance for everybody who's going to participate in that. Those are some operational highlights. Yeah, was there a comment?
It's a question. So when will the staff survey be administered?
The staff survey will be administered a little closer to the end of the year. Right now, we're finishing up the evaluation renewal cycle. But yeah, in the last month of school, we'll get that. And we've also captured a lot of the qualitative staff feedback from these one-on-one interviews. But yeah, we'll be doing both.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mentioned earlier that Deli Ness is ill today, but of course she and I have spent a lot of time talking about academics, and so I will do my best to share some highlights in her stead. We sent in the pre-reads some information about our spring MAP assessment. As you may or may not recall, the NWEA MAP is a nationally normed assessment that we do in English reading and in mathematics. We have standardized data from the STEP in English reading and in Spanish reading, but the MAP doesn't have a Spanish component. The nice thing about it is that it is normed, and that means that we can kind of dive deeply into kind of how our students are doing. It's not as formative as the STEP. In other words, it's not as granular. Here's the next step for each kid's teacher, but it does nevertheless get used as we plan for things like classroom assignments, promotion decisions, and looking at just trends and patterns across the school. So I would say that there's a mixed picture here when it comes to growth. Our kindergarten class continues to be doing great. They were outperforming the national norms in both reading and math on an absolute basis. And they had some strong growth, in particular in reading. As we've talked about throughout this year, our grade 2 has also made huge strides in reading. They started very far behind, but have made really great growth, as the STEP also showed us. We were also happy to see a pattern of growth across the grade levels in our students with IEPs, or special education students, and also our English language learners. So that was heartening to see. In our emphasis on literacy this year, we showed some flatness and actually a decline in first grade in mathematics, and that's a real concern as we look to get kids back on track. And so I know the instructional leadership team is really looking into that as we think about the shape of our rising second graders, and also our first grade lesson planning and approach. So that was the downside, and that was the disappointment that we did see in these results. I always also try to share both the growth perspective and the absolute perspective, because when you are in recovery mode, the growth has to come for a while before the absolute results get there. And so in absolute terms, looking just at second grade, we don't have these figures for the younger grades because they're not available through MAP. But for our second graders, we really want to make sure that they're not spending much longer below grade level. This was our founding first grade class. They've had the most disruption. Many of them came into our school behind, but they're also our first tested grade, and we take accountability seriously. We've been entrusted with their education, and it's our job to make sure that they're achieving on grade level. Here are the numbers. In math, 33% of our second graders, if the tests were today, would be projected to be on grade level, and only 18% in English reading, despite all of the growth from being even farther behind this year. About half of our students met their growth goals, slightly less in math, slightly more in reading. So there's a growth trend, even meeting the ambitious goals that get set. But these are not acceptable numbers to our instructional leaders by any means. And our work ahead is to move our students up, and that includes moving students who are at the level 1, which is the lowest level, and also students who are level 2 up into a level 3 or level 4. The way that these tiers work, a level 3 or a level 4 is considered proficient or on grade level. I should mention, of course, MAP is not the New York State assessment. So these are all kind of projections according to what MAP is probably predicting about how students are relative to grade level. But if you look at that upper table, which is math, you'll see we have more students in the highest tier, but we also have more students in the lowest tier. And our goal would be to at least move our students who are 1 tier below proficiency, that 25% of kids, up into the proficient realm, which would then put more than half of our students into proficiency. That's a tall order, but it's very much able to be accomplished, especially with the extra supports that we have planned. In reading, a slightly different picture. We don't have any students in our second grade class who are at a level 4 in English reading. However, a lot of them are clustered just below proficiency at level 2. And so 60% of our second graders are at level 2. Many of them would have been at level 1 at the start of this year. And so our job is to keep pushing them and also keep stretching our best readers so that we can have some who end up in level 4 as well. The there's a lot of numbers here and I just said a lot. So let me stop talking and we can take this in and let me know if you have questions. Or if
Why
you want me
only
to move.
51 students for second grade? Is it, those are just only the in-person ones?
These are, no, I believe this is our second grade class.
Just 51 is the second
Mhm.
grade class?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there may be a few who missed the test. I'd have to go back and check, but our second grade class is the smallest of our classes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, I don't have huge questions for like right this moment. Certainly, you know, would look forward to like kind of dive into it a little bit with you guys in the ed committee maybe.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you looking at like both the growth and the absolute, because I think that's a factor right now across the board. So thank you for getting it that way.
We have in the pre-reads was also the very detailed map report, which I won't walk you through now, but it's helpful. And those of you who are, whether you're used to reading those kinds of reports or not, it's good reading because you get the subgroup breakdowns and grade level versus the whole school and everything.
Michael, can you send the ed committee these slides as well after the meeting?
Absolutely. So, and this is where I missed Deli Ness's level of detail, but I do want to talk a little bit about what this means because, you know, the general pattern here is not different than what we've been talking about all year round, which is we're encouraged by growth. We've been focused on literacy. We are most concerned about our second grade students. And we want to make sure that we keep growth going. And so a few of the highlights of the approach that we're taking. One is to make sure that we continue to raise the bar in our hiring and retention of staff. We have terrific teachers at LEEP Academy, and we're excited to be having a very high rate of retention again this year. In some cases, changing some roles as we've gotten to know teachers and their strengths and weaknesses. But we're encouraged by that, but we're also very encouraged that we've been able to go for a higher level of experience in our incoming lead teachers. The long-term plan is for LEEP to be attracting people who know how to teach, who've really honed their craft at an established and successful school or network. And so that when they arrive, what's new, if it is new to them, is our specific dual language model. Of course, I'm not referring to our associate teachers who tend to be earlier in their careers. But anyway, we've been seeing success in hiring, and I think that's going to be very important. We're also building out a great deal of intervention. This year, we've had an intervention team of a dean, a full-time interventionist, and a part-time interventionist. For the upcoming year, we plan to have 5 full-time interventionists. So our second graders, our first graders, our kindergarten students, and our rising third graders would all have a full-time interventionist just with that grade level. And that team is just about fully hired out with people who have, you know, real qualifications to help our students. So, you know, as we go into academic recovery, as we talk about a budget that reflects a lot of federal aid that was meant and sent in the spirit of academic improvement after COVID, that's a major priority for us. We said in past meetings and talked today that we'd be running our own summer programs with the benefit of Diana's leadership. We also gave notice to our after-school partner that we're going to go ahead and part ways with Roads to Success. We really appreciate their help these first founding years, but we're going to be running an after-school program that's very tightly tied to our homework and after-school help goals for next year. Won't change our aftercare. It won't change the convenience for families, but it'll give us a tighter link to our academic work. And then finally, and then I know there's some questions. Finally, we also, based on staff feedback, based on just our reflections and looking at the data, are making some adjustments to the way that that we structure our school day. We want to make sure that we're delivering really high quality lessons, that we have time for planning, and that we make the adjustments to the schedule and the staffing model that can really get us there. Not to go too far into the weeds, but one thing that we're likely to do in the 3rd grade next year is to have some specialization within that team. It's such a small class, as we've seen. We will likely have an ICT class, but also specialized teachers in English and math and Spanish within our dual language immersion model. You know, a lot of credit to the team for the ongoing work that we're doing, but I'm also continuing to just press for clarity and detail around, you know, what are the specifics of how we get kids where they need to be and how we get back as a school to the philosophy and the school design that, you know, that really matters to us. Okay, David, I think you had a hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to put this question indelicately, so I apologize in advance if it comes off the wrong way. But I appreciate everything you've said about grade 2 and what you've shown us with that development. But grade 2 being the smallest, and I think also what we largely consider to be the more difficult cohort to work with, is one thing. But when I'm reading the board notes and I'm looking at other things, I'm particularly curious what's happening in grades K and 1, and to see growth in reading in grade K was encouraging, but I was a little confused by strong growth in math in grade K, but math performance was flat in grade K. And then I was also really curious what's going on in grade 1 and why those weren't addressed more specifically in the bullets, and also what's being done in those areas where you're acknowledging that you're not getting that same response.
Thank you. First, you noticed a typo, so I should have called that out. I just noticed that putting the slides together. So the way the map scores work is you're looking at you know, growth from fall to spring in the context of, you know, how students are doing relative to a larger sample. Our kindergarten class this year came in strong. They've remained strong. They've remained above the national average in both grades. But you're right, it was not right to say there was strong growth in math. They were flat. 2nd grade was pretty flat, and then actually 1st grade went down. I think that there's, you know, what our experience in 1st grade has been is something that we've been spending a lot of time on. I think it goes back to some of the ways in which we were supporting and adjusting our staff in that particular grade. And I'd be happy to share some more details with the executive committee on that. But it's not something that we've sort of brushed under the rug. The challenge of you know, how could sort of math be slipping is a frustrating one. I mean, certainly we have put a great deal of emphasis on literacy this year, where our biggest push was around guided reading groups in both English and Spanish. And that was a lot of our energy and a lot of the reason we saw so much growth there. But should it come at the expense of math? No. And so I think with our new instructional leaders coming into the organization and already here, you know, that's a big point of emphasis for them too, is to make sure to use that. Go ahead, David.
Well, that does address most of my question. I was also curious what was happening with reading in grade 1, which I think was absent from the board bullets.
Yeah, I think there I think it was a tough year for our first grade team. And I think that had, I think there were multiple things going on there.
I'm sorry, so what were the results?
For reading in grade 1,
yeah,
they were, let's see if I can pull them up.
I mean, while you're doing this, I'll also add that
Yeah,
those first graders are going to be second graders, and it sounds like the second grade staff is really making a big time effort, especially on the reading side, to really bring that up. And so that will certainly positively affect those students. But I'm just a little bit curious about what's happening in the grade 1 reading, and also
mhm.
done to affect it, since I haven't seen a comment on it.
I have a question that's sounds unrelated, but I think it does affect kids' performance. And what I was wondering is, as we're focusing on the math and the reading, how are we following up or keeping an eye on the training for the for the social emotional learning and for the NEUN practices that were lovely to hear about in the Taller de Familias? And I know that calmer, more centered, more self-regulated children have an easier time learning. And as we're all coming through, as we're all in recovery mode, I'm wondering how we're following up. I'm seeing that last year, every single teacher had the toolbox on them all the time. And I know that it was something that the kids were practicing. This year, I'm not seeing the same level. I mean, recently, I've seen some teachers with them, but I don't see as many teachers as before. And I'm wondering, how are we keeping an eye on how much the teachers are actually implementing these practices in the classroom?
Yeah. Let me answer that, and then I'll go back to David's question. I'm glad you noticed them recently, because we recently did a reset on those practices with a renewed training for teachers and kind of renewed emphasis on making sure we use our morning meeting time to be doing sharing those practices. This is also an area when I talk about scheduling adjustments for next year, is we want to make sure that we have sufficient time built in our morning meetings so that those practices can go forward. The toolbox in particular is a protocol that really gives us a nice common vocabulary around the building related to self-regulation and relationships. And so that's going to be very important. So I know if Deli Ness were here, she'd be saying, I agree with you. And we've been giving a renewed emphasis on those practices recently. We want to end the year strong in terms of that. David, the answer to your question about first grade reading in English is that the overall average percentiles decreased by 1 from fall to winter. So the average student was at the 44th percentile in the fall and was in the 43rd percentile in the spring. So so not the growth we would have wanted in reading, but not the drop that we saw in math. So we could kind of break that down. And I will also put again the link in the chat. I think Maho pointed out that the link in the other report didn't work. So I'm going to put the chat again for anybody who wants to dive into the breakdown of all the scores.
And I think we'll unpack this a bit more as well in the next education committee meeting, which is June 1st. So I can, widen that invitation to everybody on the board this time if we want to really kind of take some concentrated time just on talking that through. But let me know if if that's something you all want to explore. Yeah, Maho says yes. Okay.
Thank you. Finally, I do want to answer one question from the chat about hiring a science teacher. We are hiring a science teacher for next year. It's one way we're going to give more planning time for teachers and making sure that, you know, science gets the attention it deserves, is to have a science as a special next year. So we're hiring for that role now. If anybody knows a well-qualified bilingual science teacher, send them my way, please. And thanks for that question, Lauren. All right. I believe our next topic is the annual budget. So I would just start out by saying that we've been working with the Finance Committee with help from Bob over this last month or so to try to figure out how we can make the investments that we've been talking about and put the school in a good position to both realize our vision in the short term and continue to be on solid footing for the medium and the long term as we build out. So I'm not going to add too much to that. I hope that you see some of the priorities that I've been talking about this evening showing up in the budget. And I guess, Bob, would you please kind of share a bit of an overview as well?
Sure. Can you just give me some share screen access, Michael, if I could?
You should have it now.
Great. So this is our annual fiscal year 22 budget proposal. We've gone through several iterations of this and have discussed at length with the Finance Committee. I think Michael, kind of in the latter part of his ED's reports, kind of went over our organizational priorities for this upcoming school year, just as it relates to staff retention. Roberto kind of discussed planning for growth with our second possible facility lease. And then the hiring of interventionists are key in kind of addressing the learning loss that we saw just as it related to test scores and just lack of time in the classroom for the year. And then lastly, you know, we're making a significant investment, I think, in the school just as we get prepared for charter renewal that is upcoming. So those were kind of our priorities as we kind of piece together this budget. The budget itself is built around a school-wide target enrollment of 340 kids. We can, up top here is the grade by grade breakdown of the target enrollment. Erring on the conservative side, we built our revenue around the assumption that the school hits 98% of its target enrollment, or 333 scholars. For the sake of planning, we assume the same special education composition for the school's makeup this year, just compared to fiscal year 21. So we're holding that flat. Key revenue drivers and assumptions. Just wanted to provide some side-by-side numbers for you as you look at this. So on the left here, you're seeing kind of what we had budgeted in fiscal year 21. We project about $6.3 million in revenue this year. Next year's budget is increasing pretty significantly by about $2.7 million to a total revenue budget of about $9.1 million. This is inclusive of a 4.5% per pupil increase over the fiscal year 21 rate. This rate has been set by the state education department and was included in Cuomo's budget. And we continue to assume rental assistance of 30% of per pupil this year, which is a little bit more than 4,800 per student. Just as we consider out year growth, we conservatively budgeted a 2.5% inflator. The big driver of next year's kind of gains on the federal revenue side is related to the federal stimulus dollars from Trump's second round and also the first round of the Biden stimulus. We are actually receiving about $1.4 million through this, which is about almost $500,000 more than we had originally anticipated. So we're taking, there's some flexibility in with the years we draw these funds down. So we're taking half of it in fiscal year 22 and the second half in fiscal year 23. We also have some built-in revenue from Friends of LEEP donating some funds back to the school as part of what was built into our sublease. And then also on the development side, we budgeted about $200,000 there. 104 of that is guaranteed. And then with Roberto kind of committing himself to development, we feel another 100,000 is certainly attainable. Key expense drivers and assumptions. Obviously, the most significant driver of our expenses derive from the addition of a new grade level and the staffing hires that Michael mentioned to kind of support this growth. So our staffing is actually increasing about $2.3 million this year. On the facility side, we're looking at about a $300,000 increase as part of our base rent. And again, this is kind of cost neutral to the school as we receive rent assistance back from the DOE. This budget also includes a $100,000 outlay for a playground renovation. So the schools has kind of a guaranteed space, which needs some work. And then out years, going back to what Roberto was talking about with our second facility lease, we built in $700,000, which is kind of the starting point for a potential second facility and the lease that Roberto has negotiated. Sorry, lunatic cat. Then on the staffing updates. So if you do remember last year, there was so much uncertainty at this time, just as it related to per pupil and potential cuts, and we didn't know that there would be any stimulus funding. So we gave our staff about a 1% flat raise last year in an effort to retain staff members and do right by them. Our biggest real lever on the expense side is just developing a sustainable salary scale for the school. So what we ended up landing on was pegging to the DOE contract rate this year plus 1%. And we did develop some minimums and maximums that people were guaranteed just because, the thought of giving some teachers maybe do like an $8,500 raise. That was certainly capped this year. So we were mindful of that as we were developing this salary scale and salary placeholders for fiscal year 22. This is kind of the staffing model that you can look at just at your leisure, but we did want to note that there are 10 net positions being added to the school and just how we're allocating these positions. And so you can see on the instructional side, operations side, and admin side, net where we are currently and where the total staff headcount will be next year. These are our expense drivers. So the waterfall, this is a waterfall chart. The column on the left is really our budgeted expenditures for this year. And then these are the potential add-ons by category that comprise our total operating budget of about $8.4 million at the end. So you will see the biggest mover obviously is on the staffing side. Again, this comes with giving raises to our staff members and then also providing salaries and benefits for 10 additional staff members. The $400,000 on facility operations and maintenance is really, again, going back to the $300,000 increase in rent, just considering we built in an escalating rent schedule because we knew the school would still be in growth, and that other $100,000 that we are budgeting for the playground renovation. Then we just have some nominal movement, I think, on our professional services, non-operating side and program costs, which are relatively flat, just given the size of our budget. And then on the chart below, we just, again, graphically wanted to represent how we spent our money in fiscal year 21 versus how we propose spending it in fiscal year 22. The biggest mover here, obviously, is the staffing side, moving up to 63% of our total operating budget versus where it was this year at 53%. I think 65% is pretty common in the charter space. And again, we wanted to make an investment in our people to retain staff. Just wanted to highlight opportunities, risks, and possible changes to this budget as it sits. Opportunity, there's always the potential for more federal funding down the road in fiscal year 22. The state has some buckets of funding that it needs to allocate specifically, like CSP funds are supposed to go to new charter schools. The state continues to receive these funds, but with the charter cap in place, we saw some CSP dollars reallocated kind of towards coronavirus relief this year unexpectedly. So certainly the potential for more federal funding down the road. I think we're being conservative in our SPED estimates. Obviously, a higher SPED headcount would result in more funding. And then due to Roberto's efforts and having him throwing a significant amount of time kind of at development, you know, there's always the potential for more fundraising. Risk factors, obviously being mindful of enrollment, especially this year. There's just downstream coronavirus impacts. So I would say that is our biggest risk. I don't want to put like a dollar value on a student's head, but you know, for every student lost, I think we're looking at probably on average about $22,000 this year. So just being mindful of that. And then one possible mid-year change that we are looking at with this year running so strong and trying to incentivize staff to come back next year, there's a, you know, we're playing with the possibility of potential year-end bonuses for this work done this fiscal year that may be realized in fiscal year 22. So all that being said, where do we land? I just want to highlight the areas that are highlighted in blue here. We are budgeting $9.08 million in revenue against total expenses of about $8.4 million. That is driving net income of $625,000, and excluding depreciation on an operating basis, we're looking at about $725,000. Sample cash flows just below, we're adding about a little bit more than $460,000. We target and endeavor to add about $460,000 to our cash reserve. You know, so we're projecting about a $220,000 year-end cash balance, and then adding ending fiscal year 22 with about $681,000. This is the budget detail, just so you can get a sense of line by line how we are spending our money. And if you wanted to know how we're spending it on technology or staff travel or supplies and materials, this provides that detail. But I do want to just close with this slide, which is really just the budget from a 10,000 foot view, year over year, kind of strategically looking forward. So we do have significant net income growth in out years, starting in fiscal years 23, 24, 25. That is when we really start to generate a pretty significant surplus. And, you know, we looked at our staffing needs going into out years, and we are budgeting conservatively, I think, on revenue inflation and, you know, expense inflation as well. But, you know, next 5 years, we should have a pretty significant chunk of money in the bank. This is very standard to what we see across the charter space, especially for a school that is just operating kind of at the elementary school level. So, you know, being mindful of growth, what a lot of entities kind of do is have their elementary schools subsidized, like middle school operations and high school operations, which are significantly more expensive to run at capacity. So that is kind of our brief budget summary for this group, but just did want to provide some context from what, I think you saw a very rough cut last month and ultimately where we landed.
Thanks, Bob. Look, I think the one point I just want to take a second to emphasize there is that while we are building in a bit of a healthy cash growth there, Bob's point shouldn't be lost, and that is that we will have heavy investment in continuing to grow, and that doesn't just mean to support the building and facilities we need to incorporate fourth and fifth grade rather. It also means what we would need to take on a middle school and anything beyond that. And we want to be in a position to continue to keep and educate our children in the LEEP system and tradition. And it's going to take a lot to do that. And aside from those knowns, there are always going to be unknowns. And I hope that they are not as big as the one we just faced the last year, but they remain out there. So Bob, I appreciate the time and effort you've put into this and incorporating in some of the changes we made last month and making sure that we're poised to be in a good position. So thank you. And thank you to the executive leadership as well.
Thank you both. Does anybody have questions about any of the, go ahead, Maho.
I have lots of questions. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to be as brief and hopefully they'll be easily answered and not like making a mess of things. But most of my questions have to do with page, I don't have a number on the page, the staffing model page. So this one.
Yep.
Like third or fourth page, something like that. I was looking at this, trying to see it in detail, trying to keep in mind one thing that I saw the changes. A lot of things changed. One of the things that I saw change was the after school. How is that going to be staffed? Is that also staffed by the teachers or by other people? And why are they not in the budget?
Thank you. Yeah, so the after-school program will not be staffed by teachers. We will have part-time employees who will staff the after-school program. Essentially, what we put in the budget is the overall subsidy for that program, because there's also this is a new program that's being built out, and we have revenue coming in. We have fixed costs that are built in, and then some variable costs. So rather than kind of build in all the assumptions about what could possibly be the revenue level and what could possibly be the staffing costs, in particular for these staff positions that aren't full-time and so they don't impact all the math around benefits. Those are sort of off the books here, but contemplated. So there will be part-time after school teachers, but that model is going to probably flex based on enrollment.
Okay, so those are in addition to the staff he listed here. Got it, perfect. I was looking at the difference between instructional, like the addition of instructional, and considering that we're adding a whole grade level, sorry, I'm having trouble articulating in English. The 6, is that enough? I'm sure you've all given this serious thought. I was very, very happy to see in the budget the addition of 2 substitute teachers. That's something that I had asked before and has worried me in the past in terms of like, because of this precise model we have, how can we substitute teachers when things happen? But I've also noticed that we have had, I know it's hard to prepare for the unexpected, but in each year we have had early in the year a change in teachers. And I don't know if there's been more than what I've been aware of, but even in my own child's classroom, I've already seen that. Each year, a teacher left very early in the year. So I feel
Yeah.
like there's always people who, as soon as it starts, I don't know how common this is, but as soon as it starts, they're like, oh, wait, no, this was not the right fit for me. How are we, do we have a little bit more of like, how do we account for that flexibility in terms of like both the subs and potential changes for staffing when we lose staff members? Because I was just adding the numbers with the teachers, and it seems like it goes from 22 to 24, and that just doesn't quite seem enough. And last but not least, I don't see the counselor on this list. And I was also wondering in terms of, I'm not sure where the counselor fits. It's because I guess I'm not sure if he falls under support, instructional, or admin, but I don't see him there. And I feel like particularly since we are in recovery mode from all the trauma we've all suffered, and I'm sure.
We're not losing our counselor, don't worry.
Okay, good. But he's not in the budget. No, I was assuming we're not. But I also feel like, would it make sense to even add more support on the social emotional side? Are we considering expanding those kinds of services in light of everything that's been going through, and all the reports that there are in terms of like what kids are suffering and with this pandemic, and how that's likely impacting their results, their academic performance.
Mhm.
And I think that's it. That covers pretty
Thank
much
you. Yeah,
all the
so
others.
I'm trying to find in real time where that position, which is in the budget, would be listed on slide 6. And Bob, if you know the answer, please chime in. But we have every plan to keep our counselor and special education director, Mr. Sanchez, and also add a social worker. So to your point, we will have even more needs. And as we think about students coming back into the building, even if they've been at LEEP, but they've been at home, we know that that's going to bring with it a lot of feelings and reactions and behaviors and things to be worked through, maybe special education needs that become more apparent when the kids are in the building. So that is an area of investment in the staffing model. I wonder if he's listed as SPED coordinator in this. That might be what it is.
Who is it?
Edgar Sanchez.
Oh, he's technically, I think he's coded under like an assistant principal for next year.
Oh, because there's 2 assistant principals, so he's
Correct.
coded under.
I was curious about that. I was like, why do we have a principal and 2 assistant principals? Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, so Edgar will be back. You will see net we're adding a social worker position as well to meet those social emotional needs, Maho. And then just how we kind of framed the headcount on the instructional side. So like, if you do look at kind of that part-time position, just our thought about how we were framing that this year versus how we're framing it next year, right? So on the instructional side, we're actually adding about 12 positions to get back to those numbers. So, that covers your lead teacher growth and the interventionist that Michael mentioned, and, 2 additional specialty teachers. So just wanted to like point that out, like optically, right? If pure full-time instructional positions, that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, because on paper, it looks like we're going from 17 lead teachers to 11 lead teachers. And that just seems a little.
Right. So we also, in framing our best teacher and thinking about our best teachers, we also have, I think, the new positions, what we're calling them are like grade level chairs this year. Mm-hmm. So those are like the best of the best teachers that we have. And they'll be taking like kind of teacher leadership positions.
Yeah.
But then that brings it to 15. That's still 2 fewer than this year with more students.
I think the issue, Bob, is that it looks like in FY21, there were some teachers that are special education teachers that were probably just listed as lead teachers because that one jumps from 1 to 5.
Yeah.
So that might just be a category difference. Maho, I'd also be happy to kind of show you the grade by grade breakout that we
I
have.
would love that. Thank you. Yeah, I don't need to like take up half an hour of this of everybody's time, but I would love to see that. Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
great questions.
Essentially, the model is that we'll continue to have an integrated co-teaching classroom in each grade level, as well as associate teachers at the kindergarten level. And then, as I mentioned, a built-out team of interventionists who are each working with 1 or 2 grade levels in 2 or 3 subject areas to make sure that kids are making the gains that they need or getting extra help if they need it. So it will feel around the building, I think, like a much more robust model. And I know our kindergarten team, for example, has really felt the lack of a dedicated interventionist who we couldn't really hire for this time last year, and it's been hard to find mid-year. So being able to intentionally plan for that in each grade level, I think, is also going to make a big difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else have questions?
I don't think so. Shall we go ahead and put this to a vote? Yeah? David, you want to?
Second.
All right, I'll make the first. I make a motion to approve the FY22 budget.
I second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
I'm abstaining for now. I feel like I would love to see the detail before giving a hearty aye.
Sure, Maho. Look, I've also struggled with this budget. I think that the group of us on the finance committee also have. I think there remain to be a couple of items that should be ironed out. But the broad brush of this really does, to me at least, look like we are doing what we want to do to support the school's growth. And look, we are always at liberty to make sure we're making the changes to continue to support student education and student growth. And so those things are not going to be left by the wayside. I think the bigger issue in this motion is to make sure that we capture the larger items we need to be able to pay for, like the facilities and the growth facilities, and as we've incorporated the playground and other things like that. And I don't want you to change your vote based on that comment. I just want you to know where this is coming from.
Sorry. I'm
I would-
very tired, so it's harder to articulate in English right now, but I'm just not knowing exactly how this works. What I wouldn't want is to get locked into regarding my questions on the staff model. Like, if some things can be changed later, what I'm afraid is if after all these questions, there's still more questions being like, oh, the budget was already approved, cannot make further or cannot add to that. And that would be my fear if we still feel that after all that, it's there's not enough support for the teaching side or the instructional and emotional side.
I should say, first of all, Maho, please don't apologize for anything at all. You are very clearly articulating your thoughts and is super helpful questions. And so I'll say that in the last education committee, we discussed the staffing structure a bit. And so I totally understand where your questions are coming from. And frankly, Michael, I think just sharing, not now if you want to like double check it and review it, but then sharing out within like a day or two, just like the updated staffing structure, because I think what we're running into here is more of like categorization presentation issues, because I can tell you, Maho, that there is adequate and thoughtful staffing for every homeroom, like for lead teachers, for they're adding the social worker, the interventionist. They do have a plan that's really quite good, but it's not represented. Like the questions that you're asking are spot on in terms of like what you're seeing. But so I think, Michael, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, I'm sure you didn't like cut people from the last time we talked, and what I saw was very robust, but I think that would help everyone see it in a different way, not in this format.
Oh,
I'd be happy
thank
to. I
you.
think
Thank you so much for that, Emily.
Yeah, and I also just think to the broader comment, and you know, you all as the board of directors can tell me if you see this otherwise, but the way I see this line is that, you know, we have this continuing conversation, and in your capacity as the school governance, you want to know where our priorities are in our spending, and you want to know that the major considerations are being handled and prioritized. And you kind of want to understand tactically like what we're doing, so that if whatever your background is, you can bring that expertise to bear to really kick the tires on what we're doing. As the school management, you know, we know that we're not going to spend exactly to the dime what's laid out in this plan, and that it will flex and it will vary, and we'll continue to check in monthly. I think as a rule of thumb, charter school boards would typically, you know, if some budget category starts to flex sort of more than 10% above or below, right, Bob, then you might consider an actual formal budget amendment. But most of the time, what we try to do is keep things posted. So even as we finalize our schedules for the year and so on, you know, I may say, you know what, we're going to do this differently, and I'm going to communicate that to the board with the rationale, and we'll just continue to be in the loop. But we will not be in a position ever where we say, we know it's good for kids, we know we can afford it, we know we can explain it, but we're not going to do it because it wasn't in the budget. Instead, you know, we'll have a reasonable amount of flexibility day to day.
Thank you. That's great. So
Where were we on the motion before that?
We can vote again if
We should do it again. Yeah.
okay.
In that case, I'll make a motion again to carry the proposed 22 budget.
I second.
Thanks.
In favor?
aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I can go back to sharing the screen. Okay, next we have a rather technical order of business, but it's an important one. I don't know if anybody else would like to introduce this one. David, I think it's your prerogative if you prefer. Otherwise, I can talk about it.
I mean, I'm sorry, am I muted? No.
No.
Quite frankly, this is a very technical modification to our lease. It is between us and the Friends of, and it is really, like I said, about our ability to continue to grow. So it's got a modification of our payments. But insofar as we'll continue to make modifications to the building, and the Friends of is responsible for those things, and we will be pursuing additional space and changes as we discussed earlier in our review of what the space will look like, and bringing on folks to help us develop that space as the primary revenue generator of these two entities. We're responsible to pay for that. It's for our own needs. It was just not previously contemplated in our agreement with Friends, and therefore we need to modify our sublease. I don't think there are far more details I'm on here. If anyone has particular questions, I think we can address them. But this is all within the bounds of the budget we just discussed, and within the funds we have prepared to spend on our lease agreement. So I think it's just something that it behooves us to approve so that we can continue to develop the space we have. Roberto, have I missed something?
No, thank you for that explanation, David. It really just boils down to the loan modification. As everyone recalls, Raza Development Fund loaned us an initial amount of money. We took out a small, modest additional amount just to close out the project. And that small, modest amount allows us to, we need to modify the amortization schedule. What it effectively means is that the new payment schedule is slightly different.
Yeah, and again, slightly. Look, I think when we first had these discussions several months back, we were worried it would be a lot different, and it really isn't. So I think from where I'm sitting, this is a negligible change. But to those of you who have not sat through those belabored conversations and fights over things like fire safety and standpipes and other nonsense, I don't mean nonsense. I just mean things we didn't previously anticipate. It may seem bigger, but really it's just about our continuing to do business here.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, I think this is a straightforward motion to approve.
Yeah, so should there be no further questions, I will move to approve the sublease modification.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we're moving into committee reports. We'll start with the Finance Committee.
Well, as much as I love hearing myself talk, if Bob's still on the line, maybe he can walk us through the notes.
Sure, will do. Just sharing our dashboard per usual. One noticeable dip this month that we did notice was just a drop below our target on days of cash. This was the result. The DOE is normally very good about remitting our per pupil payments on a very set schedule. That being said, our most recent per pupil payment, which was about $900,000, was actually delayed by a few days into the first few days of March. So we did see kind of a noticeable drop on our days of cash requirements. That being said, we did receive the money like the very first day of May, so no real concerns there. On the enrollment projection side, we have submitted our final enrollments to the DOE. So we did land at kind of a year-end total of 234 students, which was a hair below our budgeted enrollment. But we did make up for that, some of that revenue loss on our total SPED enrollment and what we saw as far as students in the greater than 60 tier. Year-to-date financials continue to be very strong. I would just highlight kind of our year-to-date surplus here at about $722,000 year-to-date. So we continue to run very strong here. Our projected surplus was down about $12,000 after we made some adjustments for some office expenses and some mid-year raises that we processed. So we do project our year-end surplus at a little bit more than $500,000, which is great for a school in year two. On the cash flow statement, no, I think material changes to the previous month. And then lastly, I would just point out our AR balance is kind of ticked up to a hair under $400,000. We've completed our most recent round of grant claims, so we're hoping the state pays those out shortly, and we'll see a noticeable drop there. And then on the liability side, I think we look very good compared to where we ended last year. Most noticeably, obviously, is our PPP forgiveness. So that's a little bit more than $400,000 off the books. So equity-wise, we've seen almost a fourfold increase over where we ended last year. Again, driven by this very strong year-to-date surplus. So not a lot of changes from last month. The school continues to be in good financial health year-to-date.
And I'll just add that once again, a credit to our executive leadership and Bob's help to make sure that we keep all of those things in line. Obviously, great work getting the PPP stuff done, making sure we got reimbursements where we could on protective equipment and other COVID-related expenses, and not to lose sight of in all of that, keeping the school open and students in the school the entire time, and really not seeing a drastic reduction in enrollment during that time. So again, a credit to the leadership, and we will not, hopefully not have those same struggles, and hopefully not have that, and you know, unfortunately, maybe not see the same PPP types of benefits we saw, but nonetheless, a credit to where we are, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David and Bob. Okay, I think our next committee report is executive. Yes. Not too much here. David, Charles, and I had what I think was a pretty positive meeting with Paula Orlando, who is our liaison with the State Education Department, our authorizer, in April, as part of her overall site visit of the school, which I understand went fairly well also. I don't think that she's sent back any written feedback at this point. The conversation was, I think, just under an hour, and essentially kind of ran through you know, the monitoring visit protocols that are listed on the DOE's, I'm sorry, not the DOE's, SED's website for the purpose of the site visit, with some additions this year related to their initiatives around just involving more community members and family members in overall school kind of operations, asking us what kind of steps we were taking with that and what we were doing with DEI work at the school. So it's fairly positive. She did touch on the fact that the school's enrollment had, and we've talked about this previously, dipped last year to below 85%, which will sometimes trigger like a notice of concern from the office. But we talked through that, and I don't think that her opinion at that point was that it wasn't going to trigger any sort of notice for the first year. So that was very positive. Charles, David, am I forgetting anything really salient that I should mention here?
Oh, look, I think given the state of the world, it was a very productive and positive conversation.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I did ask her a bit about if the office was adapting its view of monitoring academic results given just the pandemic conditions that everybody's been in, and as well as, you know, the ability of kids within districts to opt out of standardized testing and what that's going to do to averages in different districts. And she emphasized that the school should kind of be building a data story that also incorporates to a substantial degree the interim assessments that the school's doing on its own. So that's definitely something that we should keep in mind heading toward renewal, is to tell that kind of data story from day one, so that there's additional context other than just state assessment results. So we'll continue to dialogue with them, I think, as time goes on. And, you know, I'm sure that they're going to have to figure out their own, how their rubric may or may not change in the upcoming years based on that. Academic Education and Accountability Committee meeting last month focused largely again on the school's own DEI work. And I think based on what we have, thank you again to Emily for volunteering your time and your thought partnership on that. In addition to, oh my gosh, I'm going to call it the wrong thing, graphic organizer. Yes, thank you, great. for Michael and Delinas and Roberto to use sort of as a thinking tool to have those conversations. So I think it's an ongoing discussion that we'll continue to have. And it sounds like from what we reviewed in this meeting, I think that a review of an additional review of the map data, as well as maybe a re-review of staffing for next year. Maho, since I put you on the meeting invite already for that June meeting. So we can kind of go through that in a more broken out way than it was presented in the budget chart.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we can move into board roles and development. Board norms and development, pardon. All right, thank you so much. I'm sure that I've said hello to him at the beginning of the meeting, but we have in our midst an observer, David Estrada, was kind enough to come. And I know we've spoken about the possibility of David serving on our board in previous meetings, and he was kind enough to give us more than an hour and a half at this point of his time. I know that we've had folks come and observe a meeting. I always think it's an important thing to do initially. Roberto, do you want to do maybe just a little context for your own relationship with David, and then I'll give David a couple minutes just to do an intro.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just very pleased and proud to be able to welcome David to this meeting and potentially to service on this board. David is a representative of our community, and he heads up the BID, the Sunset Park BID, that's Business Improvement District. Every weekend, every day, you can see David out on the sidewalks, either measuring how much trash has been collected, keeping the place clean, making sure that our businesses are thriving, and also looking at the future and trying to figure out how can we best make this neighborhood and community thrive. We had a meeting last week, Michael, myself, and David, and we talked about all of those good ideas that David is bringing as executive director to his organization. I met David when we first came into Sunset Park, and I was trying to get close to our city council person, and you know, David had done a stint with the city councilman's office and was very insightful about how we should position our school and how best to be open and have open arms to all of our government elected officials. So I've just been really pleased with the relationship and have relied on David's good counsel to open the doors to the business leadership of the community and beyond. So David, thank you for coming to visit with us today. David Estrada.
Well, thank you, Roberto. That's a kind introduction and pretty much tells the story on that side. I'd like to give you a little background about myself also, just so you know who I am and where I'm from, and then a little bit about my work with the BID in Sunset Park in general. So I'm a 35-year Brooklynite, son of California. My dad was from West Texas, so I have a real affinity for Tejanos, so I had no trouble getting warm to Roberto. I think you might have seen, sorry about the kids wandering back and forth, but I have a newly minted 6-year-old and an about to be 5-year-old, one in pre-K, one in kindergarten, both returning to full-time school for the first time in the last 3 weeks. One is here at PS 154 in Windsor Terrace. So I have some skin in the game when it comes to just the topic of caring for our children and education. I'm not an educator by trade, so I don't come from an academic background or an education background. I spent about 20 years working for a very large human resources consulting firm that served Fortune 500 companies and did adult learning scenarios and blended learning models with online and other sorts of components around career development, executive coaching, outplacement, job placement, things like that. So I'm curious about what LEEP does, and I encountered Roberto. Nice guy, you know, we're both nice guys with the gift for gab, right? So, you know, we got along, but he invited me to come over and speak a little bit at an orientation. You were using a church space down in Bay Ridge, and I thought, oh, good, you know, I can do these guys a favor. Maybe they'll take a lease on the avenue, or I think by that time it was a foregone conclusion. So I walked in and I started, you know, spending a little time listening to what was being described to the teachers. This is before the school had even opened, or it was moments away from opening. And I was really inspired. and I thought, this is something that Sunset Park needs. This is something that communities like Sunset Park needs. And so I just developed a commitment to supporting the school, regardless of a role on a board or anything like that. For a very practical point of view, LEEP is now one of the largest leaseholders in the Sunset Park Business Improvement District. Maybe Key Food has you beat on square footage, but you're also one of the largest employers. And you're an example of adaptive reuse of historic architecture. And you're an example of innovative educational uses of space, whether it's the partnership with the church for play space, or, you know, or the beautiful work you did upstairs at the Chase building. So, you know, that's the future of the neighborhood. We have a lot of places where other organizations will need to look to you, even if they're not in the education sphere. They may need to look to you as examples of how to thrive and adapt and, you know, be successful for the long term in a community like Sunset Park. So, you know, with the Business Improvement District, Roberto's right. We pick up trash, recover graffiti, but we also spend a lot of time interacting with city agencies. And so, you know, it's not like I'm, you know, pulling strings and people are jumping, but, you know, if something goes wrong, and I know the guy to call it sanitation, or, you know, I know what angle to take with the Department of Transportation, or, you know, these sorts of things are parts of my daily work. So maybe that's part of the skill set I could bring to LEEP, you know, in the next years, because you'll be expanding and looking for accommodation, you know, whether it's curb space or trash pickup or who knows what, all the practical stuff that goes on. So I'm committed to the mission. I'm inspired by what LEEP does and how you do it. But I see you as an important part of the business life of the community as well. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, there you go. I'm committed to supporting the organization. That's the bottom line. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. But
Thank you,
my story.
David. Yeah, no, and I should also mention this board had its very first meeting in your offices.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
So we appreciate that connection. Our own authorizer, the Board of Regents, has been pushing all charter schools to make sure that we have real community representation as part of our trustees, and I don't think it gets realer than that. So we're really glad you're with us tonight, and look forward to circling back afterwards, you know, as we consider this.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, David, I know you've talked to Roberto, you've talked to me, you've met with Michael, and, you know, now you've been part of probably one of our biggest board meetings of the year. So thank you for all of the commitment you've already shown. I've already circulated David's resume around to everybody, and we can touch base after, not necessarily tonight, but I'll touch base with you again. And I always like to have folks come in and actually observe a meeting, see how they feel, and, you know, sit with things. But we're very excited, at the very least, at the prospect of having you serve on the board. And thank you again for coming.
If I may say, when we stop doing meetings on Zoom, David, we actually feed you a very small sandwich.
If you weren't invested already, David.
If you feed me, you know, I'm going to keep coming back. I'm like a cat that way. So that's fine.
Thank you so much. Okay, other items here. We are looking at the prospect, even though Maho has been our parent rep for about 1.5 years at this point. It's written in the charter and possibly also in the bylaws. I would have to check twice that we would cycle out a parent each year. So I know that the school leadership team is looking at some prospective new parent candidates and getting closer to some potentials there. So we're excited about that. I had a conversation with Daria Witt of Elevate Ed last week. She is a bilingual education expert. She doesn't seem to, and they do professional development services for educators on bilingual education. They don't do dual language immersion, and they work in the upper grades. And it seemed that she was not necessarily able to do board service at this point, but we're gonna stay in touch, and I'm going to see if I can nudge her on maybe spreading the word to her colleagues or, you know, folks in the field to see. I know that we're still looking for a bilingual education expert for the board, or even to serve on a committee. would be wonderful if we really could get somebody who's very well versed in the dual language immersion, literal program that LEEP's implementing. So I know that work will continue with the school leadership team. And I think we are also, if possible, and if you all know, hoping to add some operations expertise, charter ops expertise to the board. So I think we're pursuing some potential leads there, but if people have contacts that they know within the charter world who would bring that level of expertise, particularly for a growing school, that would definitely be helpful. And the last item here is for me just to say publicly, which I have shared with you all privately and very heavy-heartedly, which is that because of my increasingly very hectic work schedule and the toll that is sort of taking on me with this work, just kind of personally and also in some noticeable and slightly concerning ways on my health, I am going to have to step down from the LEEP board in June this year. And that has not, this is maybe the third or fourth time I've said this out loud to a group, and it has not gotten any easier to say it. And I absolutely understand what tremendous work lies ahead of the school, and will try to help in any way that I can, including by continuing to recruit for my replacement. I do want to open it up to this group here to think about whether anyone would want to step into that role themselves. I think that you are an amazing group of people who've done a tremendous amount of work in particularly stressful conditions this year plus, and I truly so strongly believe in this school and the team that we have in place and our ability to make really great progress in the coming year. And I will continue to be a friend of this organization, of this school, in whatever way I possibly can. And I will miss you all terribly. Emily.
If I haven't said it in public setting, you'll certainly be missed. And it's really been an honor and a privilege to do this with you. And I hope that you'll not be a stranger.
I definitely won't, David. Thank you very much.
And I need to wait for the graphic, you see.
Well, you've got one more meeting, right?
One more meeting, yes. You'll have me.
So we'll be able to do a big, very important topic.
No, don't, please.
I just want to say right now that
We'll email a cake, right?
When we started all of this back in 2015, I knew Gabrielle way back when we were both working with Edison Schools, and I just knew the leadership and the grace and the intelligence, everything, the whole package. And I think I tried to tempt you, Gabrielle, to join us as part of the team, and our paths didn't cross then, but I'm so happy that our paths crossed and you led our launch team past the authorization successfully, and you've made it so that our board has grown exponentially in its own wisdom and counsel through a very difficult moment. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you. And I know you're not going to be far away, so and this isn't the last time we'll thank you. So thank you.
No, please. It's been an honor. Thank you. I think that is the end of our official business. We're now can move into the public comments. If any of our parents and observers here still have any comments or that they want to share.
If I may, just one more thing, Gabrielle, there was a question from Ms. Woods regarding how do we discern and identify parent representatives for the board. I just answered very quickly and said, please if you have interest as a parent in leadership, that each parent is certainly welcome to talk to the leadership team and let Michael and Delines know, and then we go into a process for that. And that's how, Michael, if you have any additional thoughts that are more specific.
Yeah, in these starting years, it's been a process of a nomination, a kind of mutual conversation, and then meeting the board and serving with the board. It's As we build out, we expect that will be replaced with more of a formal parent organization and, election process. But in these forming years, it's still more of an individual process. So if you have interest or you have a nomination of another parent we should talk to, we'd love to hear from you. And we also want to make sure that we are not losing all of the other ways in which we're interacting with families. So you don't have to be representative on the board to be involved in the school. But obviously we've been grateful to Maho for all of her service and the way she's been able to connect different communities within the school and share her own experience as a parent and all that kind of work, and even help with some of our public health outreach. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak more if you'd like to chat, Alma, and anybody else who might be listening or watching this later.
So once again, this was, go ahead, Maho.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a very quick comment that I am very pleased to see that the number of attendees, of parents who are coming to participate and to listen in on the meeting has been growing, and I'm very pleased to see that. Just to see more community engagement from the parent side.
So we now have actually 3 of our parents in attendance, and I just want to give everybody an opportunity to make a comment. Commenting is optional, but always welcome. And so, Ms. Woods, would you like to share anything?
I'll keep it brief. I just appreciate having the opportunity to attend these meetings. And I shared it with the panel, but I do appreciate Maho's perspective and just her being on the board as a parent representative. She has some very targeted questions that a parent, things that parents may want to ask, but they may not have the opportunity to. So I do appreciate just being a part of this community. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Daisy, would you like to share anything?
Hello. I was wondering, I have 2 questions. I was wondering when families might get the school calendar, and also you mentioned like after school for next year. I'm wondering just like early release Wednesdays, if the school run after school will be an option, or if you guys will have soccer roof again next year.
Good questions. If the calendar wasn't on Facebook yet today, it's going out. We're just like getting everything finalized in both languages and making sure that none of the dates conflicted with anything else. So that'll be out very imminently if it's not already. The after school would go immediately from the early release point on Wednesdays. So there's no need to find an in-between program. I don't want to speak for our after school director and restrict her in any way in terms of what kind of outside providers might be there. At this point, I would not predict a return to soccer roof, even if we're able to add athletic programming. That particular program, and we've used that venue and will continue to use it. We like them as a partner in the community. But it's tough with a lot of kids and buses. In particular, as long as there's restrictions on seating within buses, it becomes really expensive to have buses going back and forth. So I think we're more likely to look for something that's either on site or on that playground nearby to add some more athletics.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Melody, I think that's Ms. Sosa. Welcome to our board meeting tonight. Feel free to make a comment if you'd like. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm good. I was actually not aware of these monthly meetings. Margarita gave me a call and she said you should join. I'm like, really? Like, I didn't know. I'm like, I don't even see it on Facebook. So she said you have to go to the website, but I don't really go to the website. So I think it's important for us to like maybe put it in the calendar so parents know that they can attend the meetings. Like that, you'll get more parents.
Yeah. I
monthly.
appreciate that feedback. We have been posting them to Facebook, but sometimes Facebook is a bit of a mystery. So there's
Yeah.
probably more that we can do to push that out, and maybe even through class tag reminders or something.
Yes, yes,
Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight.
sure.
Okay, I don't believe we have any other members of the public, Gabrielle.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for everyone who was able to join us tonight. And thank you, of course, to everyone who, I know this was a long meeting, but I think there were a lot of really good questions raised, and which is the point of us being here, to kind of hash through what's the decisions we're making and make sure that we are all right before we take our votes. So thank you all, as always, for your candor and for kind of pushing our thinking and hanging in there. All right, 7:57. Unless anybody has any other questions or comments before we adjourn. Okay, all right, then I will go ahead and make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much, and we will see you in June. Have a
Thank
good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.